Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to another episode of my summer deep dives. I'm covering all 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already got a few uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, so go check those out. But once you've finished off with this one on Burton Albion, and who else better to discuss the Brewers than the excellent Ed Walker, the face of D3, D4 football over the last few years, someone whose opinion on lower league football I have so much regard and admiration for. So great to have you on the show, Ed. How are you?
It's very kind words, Gab. Thank you. I felt like he had a different opinion on me with some of the things that we've joked about at times on our League One show last season, especially. But no, great to talk Burton with you.
I love you enough to take the piss out of you. That's where we are.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming on to Burton Albion then, Ed, I suppose I wanted to look in terms of starting with the big picture, which is how much of this season is going to be about continuing on the momentum that we've seen from Burton under Dino Maamria, where the form from when he took charge is pretty much top half form, and how much of it is actually a bit more of a rebuild because of the key players that are actually leaving the club.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a bit of both. In my mind, we're kind of back where we were 2 years ago. So you go back to the end of the 2021 season, that disastrous start into Buxton, Hasselbank and Mummer had come in. They had a really good turnaround. Likewise, like this, I think our record in the second half of that season was basically a playoff spot. It was a really good form. And we came into that summer looking to get rid of the people who hadn't worked in that relegation battle and rebuild a squad there. And I think 2 years ago, the squad had been kind of built a bit earlier than it had been now. I think the core of the group was in. It led to a decent start of the season where I feel like the campaign we had, if I remember right, first half was kind of spent around top 10, top 12. Always felt like the playoff sides were a step too far at this stage with the ability they had. And then the problem was the January window of the 21-22 season when too much was just let go in one go and it just started the decline that led to last season, obviously. So I think we're back where we were 2 years ago. You naturally do want to continue on from what Dino's done, but it's not easy because there's so much to build. I mean, I think with the two new signings in now, there's 10 contracted players. Currently, no fullbacks or goalkeeper. That will get addressed. You know, they will come in. We'll see who that is. Some of the players who've been offered new deals haven't had them. McGillivray was going to be one of them. He's obviously gone to MK Dons. Connor Shaughnessy went to Portsmouth. I still expect someone like Terry Taylor to move on. I kind of think Tom Hamer might move on. I hope there's Josh Larger stays. We'll have to see what happens with those contract deals. So, yeah, it's as much as you want always to improve and progress on what was, I think it was 15th, I remember right, last season. I'm recognising at the same time that we are going to look a pretty different side, really, from the one that certainly finished last season, with all the loans that were crucial to that survival push as well.
I looked at Burton the year before, Ed, and it felt like although you actually, I've got to credit Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank for putting you in such a solid position, and I never want to
Mm.
lose sight of that context of Burton Albion being 17th in League One is still an incredible achievement. But it felt like a lot of the early results was based on being really strong at set pieces, crosses into the box, and capitalising on opposition mistakes. And it felt like whenever anyone that was half decent at the basics that could defend balls into the box that didn't make mistakes, they'd probably beat Burton without being particularly outstanding themselves. Whereas I feel teams under Dino Maamria have got to work harder to beat Burton Albion because you're that much more creative and unpredictable.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I certainly felt that. Can I, when we're at the stage we can start to say last season as the season just gone, or can we
I
start
think
talking
we were at
about
last season stage.
let's say 2 seasons ago that I'm talking 21-22. I definitely agree with you on that, where it did feel like the massive set piece threat in the team, and if you shush that out, you snuff Burton out, and that's what those top sides were able to do. And I suppose this year under Marmia, the set piece threat is still there. It's been enough the last 2 years. The deliveries that come into the likes of Joe Powell and Terry Taylor putting it onto the head of someone like Braithwaite or Sam Hughes or Connor Shaughnessy who attacks it and the likes of that. And maybe now there's a little bit more open play creativity. I mean, Mark Helm's been so influential in that. I
Yes,
cannot wait to see how much he grows this year because he's that ability to just get on the ball, carry it, take it past men. It's such a valuable skill to have, and there's not many in the team that can do that. So it has felt like there's a bit more of an open play threat maybe this year. And I think the main positive to me under Marmria has just been that spirit back into the team again. They've just battled and thought through everything, and it's the core of it's such basics in football, but it's what's allowed Burton to achieve against the odds, even now really being in League One for 6 consecutive years, which
yeah.
for the size of the club really in the history they have, you have to admit is an achievement, even if we have been higher in the last 10 or so years.
Do you know what, Ed? It's felt for the previous 4 years before Maamria came in as number one that the club was almost turning to heroes of the past to sort of rekindle their sparkle. And it felt like, even though you can't argue with some of the results that Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank delivered in his second stint and Nigel Clough in his second stint, they both did well in difficult circumstances. I
Yep.
don't want to underplay that at all. At the same time, it felt like there was a little bit of a malaise, and the club maybe just missed, whether you'd call it a fire, whether you'd call it a sparkle, whether you'd call it
I know
an
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
electricity that the club had in the mid 2010s when it rose up the divisions and was this brilliant underdog. It lost that a little bit, and I feel like under Maamria, that spirit is coming back.
I think there's an argument for it. I definitely get what you're saying. The back end of Clough, it really felt like the team was kind of stagnating just in the middle of the League One table, which was fine. But I remember the frustration I was always having, and I remember it particularly, I think at the end of 1919, where we just finished a bit off the playoffs, not really been
Ninth,
in the
wasn't it?
mix, and then you look at the players who are out of contract, and you lose Carl McFadden to Coventry, and you lose Jamie Allen to Coventry, and Marcus Harness goes to Portsmouth early into the window. So three key men who really shone in the back end of the previous season, moving on. It always just felt like there was more of an interest in kind of staying in the black, perhaps with the financial running, rather than actually trying to pushing towards the championship again, having just been relegated from it recently.
Which you can't argue with as well, because
Mm.
I think Ben Robinson is such a sensible businessman, and I think Burton Albion are incredibly lucky to have him as chairman. Because I remember hearing Gary Rowett speak about it a few years ago when he was manager of my team, Birmingham, and
Hmm.
he said there's a couple of things that he remembered with Ben Robinson. Firstly, he was very strict about turn off the lights when you're done with them, and all the little one percenters that make up the bigger financial picture. But also, early in his career, if Burton had just had a heavy defeat, which I think he had a few of them to
Oh
Port
yeah,
Vale and
yeah.
maybe
Bristol
Wimbledon,
Rovers. I remember
yeah,
that one.
Bristol Rovers. Um, he wanted to sort of take the attention off the game and take the pressure off the manager, which I think was a wonderful way of supporting managers. And it feels like Dino Maamria has benefited from that as well.
Yeah, Ben Robinson is he's one of the best chairman in the EFL. I'm not going to pull around I'm not interested in getting to this best of the best, but he is one of undoubtedly, and all that Burton have done in the last 30, 40 years since I think he's been involved since the mid 1970s, really on the board, and everything
Oh,
that's
wow.
happened since
I
has,
didn't
has
realise it
been
was that long, actually.
yeah, it's been a long, long association, and it kind of it leaves me a bit worried for what comes afterwards, because you're just not quite sure. You've had that much success. You want the right person in next, and you see all the horror stories that come around from new ownerships that do come in, and even if they try and might to stop some of those ownerships coming through, it can happen. And
Could his son
well,
take charge? Because his son's involved in the club, isn't he?
there was a family involvement. Yeah, his daughter Fleur Robinson was involved for a long time. She's obviously now with Wrexham,
Oh, right.
who's gone across to there. That she moved over, I think, maybe 12, 18 months ago. So the family's always had quite a bit of involvement in it, because it's a man from the area, his local club,
Mm.
his boyhood team, and it's been such a wonderful relationship, really. And he's been able to, all the success that Burton have had in the last 10, 15 years and beyond is really down to him.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to think that when you've had an owner that has been so successful and so brilliant for the football club, it's difficult to replace them with like a straight swap where someone comes in and
No,
goes,
definitely.
wham, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I'll take the 100% stake, because I think that's quite a dangerous thing. Whereas my sort of strategy for it would be you want to gradually drip someone into the club, make them get a feel for the culture and spirit of the place, and then once they sort of prove themselves to be a trustworthy person, then you can start the conversation about them having a bigger stake. But it's
Yeah,
going to be very
I don't know
difficult.
when that is, Gab. By the way, we could talk in
Mm.
years down the line here. There's been
Yeah,
nothing. It's everything's just the same as it is. The
yeah,
board the board stays the way it is for a long time now.
yeah. And whether you'd have a situation where Ben Robinson continues to put the money in, but then there's other people sort of
Mm.
running the club on a day-to-day basis, I'm not entirely sure about the operational side.
Perhaps everything has been very consistent up there for a long time, and it's what's
Mm.
allowed things to go the way they have.
Sure. Well, let's move on to on-field matters, and I suppose let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start.
How far
Um,
back we going here?
Game of,
1950s, yeah. Okay,
yeah, Sound of Music reference. So
very good.
Craig McGillivray's gone to MK
Hmm.
Dons after forcing them down to League Two in the final day of last season. Jordan Amissa was only on loan, wasn't he, from Sheffield United? So
Yes.
you're gonna need two goalkeepers, I think.
Well, I think basically the only goalkeeper to me is Jake Keane, who's the goalkeeper coach. So
Ah,
yes, there's a lot. Garrett was let go; his time was done, and then youngster Callum Hawkins, who'd been on the books as a young pro for quite a number of years, but never really looked like he was honestly going to progress up to the level. He's been released as well. So there's no goalkeepers. It literally is a completely blank slate for Dino to do, and I'm curious what he comes up with. We would have loved McGillivray. He was brilliant in the second half of last season. So good. I've always been a really big fan of him going back to his Portsmouth days and his days with Shrewsbury. And
yeah.
I didn't think he was ever that bad at Charlton. It felt like a real acquisition when he got him.
He had this spell, didn't he, Ed, of just being ridiculously unlucky to be behind really good goalkeepers. Like
Yeah.
at Walsall, I think he went to Walsall from Harrogate, I think it was, and he was behind Richard O'Donnell. And then I think at Portsmouth had a good goalkeeper at one stage, and then one to Shrewsbury had Dean Henderson in 17-18. So he had a really unlucky period, and then I think he got his opportunity at Portsmouth and it's kind of grown from there.
And it really did make a difference having him in because, Garrett would have his moments. There were some quality ones, he saved a penalty end of the year last year at Forest Green Rovers. He can pull out some stops, but then everyone remembers the Morecambe game. That joke comes around quite a lot. He's never been that competent coming off his line. His distribution generally has been quite weak. He's been a decent level shot stopper, perhaps, who might well go down to League Two next year. We'll see what club picks him up. I wonder if Morecambe might fancy him. Maybe we'll see who's in the market for a goalkeeper. And it really felt different having McGillivray in there because you always want a guy in goal who you just put your faith in. You know that if that backline does get beaten, you've got someone who's a commanding presence, who's going to be strong. And McGillivray was that. And, he should be excellent for Imke Dons. It's weird. It's kind of weird to think that I seem to remember on the last day he very much enjoyed the fact he sent MK Dons down and made fun of the fans that were behind him in the goal. So he's got to get back on side with them now, which is quite funny. It's quite funny, yeah, when you think about it. And who's the other lad they just brought in? They brought two goalkeepers in yesterday, didn't they? I'm trying to remember now.
Oh, no, Nathan Arnish from Charlton.
Nathan Arnish, yeah. So they seem to be Charlton B at the minute, don't they? With the amount of addicts they seem to have in that squad at the moment.
Yeah, Alex Gilby they got as well, didn't they? Which is a great signing, I think. So in terms of the fullback positions you mentioned earlier, Zach Ashworth obviously had a really good second half of the season on loan from West Brom. He's going to be tough to replace, isn't he?
Yeah, I'd love him back. That's why I felt he was solid without being particularly spectacular. I felt like it was always quite solid for him. I think has he turned 21 yet? I'm not quite sure. He's still very much early 20s, and I think in my mind he's not ready for West Bromwich Albion yet. I'm not quite sure on the fullback situation there at the minute. I'll have to do a little bit of digging on that, but I think it'd be right for him to have another loan back, and maybe there's the possibility of him coming back for a full season. We'll just have to wait and see with that. But it's been good because, a bit like with goalkeeper, really, the standout left back's been a position Burton have really struggled to replace really since McCrory left several years ago now. And
I love the chant for Damien McCrory.
Yeah, it's great. So we start as Clough tries Colin Daniel there. That just doesn't work. And then it's Cameron Borthwick Jackson's a year and a half, 2 years. That doesn't work either.
Also, I remember Colin Daniel having a great game against Accrington Stanley in 18-19.
He probably did have a couple, yeah, but generally it always felt like his best qualities were further up.
Yeah.
Than being back defensively. It's positioning of him and Borthwick Jackson likewise are both the same. Because I remember a little bit where, was it Hasselbank maybe tried Borthwick Jackson as kind of a left winger, and that was more alright because you had that support behind him. But generally, yeah, left back's been a hard position to fill, and then Ashworth came in, did a very solid job there as a wing back in the back three that we've been playing, and it's a position to fill again.
I think that the loan market, I don't think there's any escaping it, Ed. It's going to be so important to Burton again this year, because as much as you try and get your permanent signings on point and you do your due diligence as well, the simple fact is Burton Albion can't compete on wages for the best permanent signings at this level.
Yep.
So you've got to get, in order to get affordable quality, which Burton Albion did brilliantly last season with Dale Taylor and with Zach Ashworth, going to local clubs, big clubs, and
Jasper Moon likewise was a great loan signing.
Jasper Moon, yeah. Fantastic. I mean, that's going to be so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a matter of being patient with it because they won't come now. They'll come later in the window, maybe as the season just starts. So we might well find that as much as you want the starting left back, the starting full backs, I think we're maybe sorted a bit more the front line now. Probably need a left winger side if we're going to go to the front three. But the striker position certainly feels relatively sorted now with the players who've come in. So
yeah,
they will come. They'll come. But the window runs to the end of August, of course. So there's 2 months left. Loads of time left to get the players in that are needed for that position.
Let's talk Cole Stockton because
Mm,
I can see why a lot of fans are incredibly excited about this signing because he was the third top goal scorer in League One in 21-22 in a Morecambe side that didn't actually have that much creativity. And the weird thing from my point of view is actually I thought they had more creativity last season, and Cole Stockton didn't turn up until
yeah.
April. And granted, he got into double figures in a relegated side, so still decent from that point of view, but he didn't look right for much of the season. Part of that you could put down to maybe a niggling injury at the start, and he still had to play every game. Whether there was a bit of toys out the pram because he didn't get the moves that he wanted last summer. I'm a little bit in two minds. I can absolutely see Cole Stockton with a good pre-season and working under Dino Maamria having a brilliant season. I really can see that. But I also think there's an element of risk because if you get the Cole
Yep.
Stockton that we saw for 8 months of last season, I would worry a little bit about that.
There's question marks on him, and that's what makes him a Burton Albion signing. We don't
Yeah,
get players that don't have question marks on them. It's
sure.
just natural the way. There were question marks about AJ when he turned up, having not really done anything particular with Barnsley in a great last season. He's now with Bolton up the top end of the league, so good on him for that. Cole, I can't help but be excited. You can't help but not be. I mean, Gab, there's certain
You
qualities you
can't help
need
but
to be.
not be.
You can't. You can't not be excited by it. Look, there's
Um,
certain qualities you need to be an effective Burton Albion forward. You can't just be a goal scorer. There's so much more to your complete game, and he does have that undoubtedly. And those spectacular solo moments he's had for Morecambe over the last 2.5 years has been so exceptional. It's quite exciting at the thought of that. And I think there's a previous relationship. I think Dino Maamria worked with him at Southport several
oh
years
yeah,
ago when they were both together, and that might be part of the reason he's got the pull. I'm honest. I was convinced he was going to Lincoln. I don't really understand how he's ended up at Burton, and hopefully that's to our own benefit. And I think it's really down to us providing that service to all areas that can help him put it away.
yeah. Because if you get the 21-22 version of Cole Stockton,
But it's
or
weird because
even
Burton are not a side to do that, Gab. It's not really been the case. I mean, Hemmings has had a double-figure season. Adbiaja was well on track for like a 20-goal season the way he was going. But generally, Burton have been a team that have always shared around the goals, and maybe you've had one guy hit 10 goals towards the end of the season. So the thought of actually having a guy who could generally be right up at the top of the scoring charts is it's quite exciting actually to think about
yeah.
for a change.
No, that's an interesting point actually, because the side that won back-to-back promotions had
Aiken's got 10 both seasons, and that was top scorer.
yeah, and
Yep.
Stuart Bevan was probably
Yep.
single digits, but he was
hmm
just an absolute workhorse. So, yeah, I think that was the important thing for Cole Stockton as much as anything. I just saw him at times last season where it's like he wasn't running for things that you would expect him to run for, and that's got to change this year. So hopefully, Maamria can really get into him and stamp the message across because if you can do that, then it's a great signing. Similar for Josh Gordon. I have
Yeah.
less concerns with Josh Gordon from the work ethic point of view
hmm
because he was leading the line for a high pressing, high energy Barrow side last year. Joint fifth top goal scorer in League Two. I like that signing actually.
I'm a little bit worried that he's not going to have that great output because he's probably not going to be the main man. Is my feeling. I don't know. If we might play a two, maybe them together. If we play a three, I think we need to get a left winger in because to me, him and Josh Walker are both right-sided wingers. I think if they're going to play out wide,
Do you not think it'd be 4-2-3-1?
it all depends on what comes in, Gab. We've got to get
Mm.
more players in yet. I mean, the starting midfield's kind of already there, especially with Powell and Hellman there. There's probably still need that tenacious player, which Deji Elijah would be if he re-signed. Otherwise, at the minute you've got Kieran Gilligan and Charlie Lakin under contract, and neither of them have really demonstrated to be the right level for Burton yet. Although
Mm.
Gilligan maybe could be down the line. So it's curious whether we're going to play Stockton and Gordon together or whether Gordon's going to deploy that wide. And I think the
Yeah,
fact that Gordon's probably going to play as kind of the understudy to Stockton in terms of the focal point might mean his goal output. Generally, I'm not expecting it to be that high, but it's nice to have the thought of him having in the team, certainly.
he did play on the right of a front three at Warsaw,
Yeah,
where
that's one to
he
forget.
kind of had the freedom to push into
I
goal
think was
scoring
it Andy
areas.
Cook alongside him at that point? Was it?
Oh, you're testing
Or
my
was it
knowledge
Morgan
now.
Therier? Trying to think
Um,
now.
yeah, so 18-19. I'm thinking of maybe 19-20 Warsaw season
Okay.
when I think Cook might have left by that point because I think he left after the relegation and
So it
might
would
have
have
gone to
been. Oh, that
Tranmere.
was the season they went through like loads of strikers, wasn't it? So like Rory Gaffney was on the books.
Yeah, Rory Gaffney, gosh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Can't remember
so
from his squad.
anyway, I think in terms of Josh Gordon, the point being he can play either role and could be an
Yep.
understudy to Cole Stockton. And even though he's 5'10", I think the fact that he's played down the middle in quite a direct Barrow side, even though I'm not expecting him to be great in the air, I still think he can compete
It
in
feels a
that.
bit like with Josh Walker, who's a similar height. And the thing with Walker, it's weird to describe, but he's kind of like the one who doesn't necessarily win the aerial battle, but he puts the opponent off enough that the ball can drop his way.
Or drop
That's been the
to
skill
another
of
team.
Walker in the limited appearances he's had so far, and it feels like Gordon could be similar.
Yeah, and you can also get Mark Helm stepping onto those second balls as
Yes,
well.
definitely,
Because Helm, I think, is going to be really important because he's the one that you're
absolutely.
probably going to be confident of keeping hold of this summer.
Well, I'm not sure how long. I think it might be 2.5 year deal he signed when he arrived in January.
Mm.
So definitely, but he's the one whose growth I'm absolutely most excited about to see now because he's still only 21 years old. Had a really good impact in the back end of the season. Just that ability to get the ball in midfield, take on his man, maybe drift into the left channel a bit, pick up the ball there, come inside onto his right foot. And he's become even more useful as Joe Powell's now to drop deeper because of that absence of Terry Taylor in the team.
Mm.
So Helm has definitely become the key contributor, the key creator for midfield at the moment.
What sort of season are you expecting from Joe Powell?
Depends who's around. If Terry Taylor does stay, which I don't think he will, quite frankly, I think he is going to go to the Championship or another club and probably deservedly so after the season he's had. I think Dino might well keep Joe Powell in that deeper midfield role, which has kind of been a bit of a blessing in disguise, which it happened completely by chance, I seem to remember. We were at Bristol Rovers, played a two midfield, Chris McCann alongside Oshalaja, and Powell was in the number 10 ahead of them. And I think it was it McCann who came off injured quite early on, and Powell got dropped back, and he just became brilliant. And what you suddenly realised is he's not just a technical player; he's got a really good amount of grit to him. Loves getting stuck into the challenges. Really
Interesting.
feels
I
that
wouldn't have
passion, which is
associated that with
no, I
Powell
wouldn't have
before.
either, and that was quite impressive. It really caught my eye just how stuck in he was keen to get in that deeper role. And then you've got a guy who also is comfortable receiving it on the turn, carrying it through midfield, and of course playing the passes from slightly longer range. So maybe he keeps with that this season. It really depends on the formation, but I think I would like to see Powell and Helm both deployed a bit further
Mm.
forwards as more technical midfielders with some behind them
Yeah,
if we can.
do you know what? I actually think that if Powell has got that destructive side to his game, I reckon that might suit him more because if I think of Josh Powell at his best, it's probably when he opens his legs up a little bit more and plays like a more of a telling pass. And I think sometimes when you play further forward, you need someone who's either going to take
Yep.
someone one on one, which isn't really Powell's game, or you need someone to be a bit more
My favourite,
intricate.
the skill I think he's always had is his ability to shield the ball. He'll get his body between the player and the man and just shield the balls. He'll carry it through midfield and then lay it off to the
Okay.
people around him. And I just see what you mean. It kind of feels like if you had both in the team, Helm they can't be stepping on each other's positions if you put them in number 10 roles each. And
Mm.
I think I'd prefer Helm in there because he's the one who's probably more likely to have a shot
Yeah.
rather than Paolo try to slip someone in and maybe there's not always that movement. So I quite like the idea of Powell deeper, but I still think we need that to get that full balance in the midfield. I think we need that tenacity put into there, which neither of them really provide. Oshalaja provides it, but if you have him, you lose technical ability with him because he is the kind of player who basically receive the ball facing one direction and play the ball facing the same direction.
Mm.
He's not really going to get it on turn and play it somewhere else. So if Oshalaja doesn't sign a new deal, maybe opens up the opportunity to try someone else in that role.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just trying to think about the balance of how Burton's attack's going to look. So if we say, for the sake of argument, that you've got Cole Stockton down the middle, you've got Josh Gordon on the right, and then you've got Helm in the 10 position, what sort of profile of player do you think you're going to be looking at on the left? An out-and-out winger, or
In what formation is this? Sorry.
so I'm thinking 4-2-3-1.
Okay. So Gordon
Oh,
on the right. Um, I would have thought someone in the mould of Charlie Kirk is what my thought would have been
interesting.
on that left hand side. Someone who's going to naturally play inverted, come inside, give the opportunity to that left back to push on, provided he's a player who's going to be dynamic, which is what I really want. Because if we are going to play this 3-5-2 that we've been playing in the back end of last season, the relegation battle, the width is for the wing backs is so crucial, and you want those dynamic players. And you
Mm.
had that with Ashworth, but on the right hand side when Hamer was there, it's not the same level because Hamer's, he has a very unique skill set, Tom Hamer, but he's never been a flying wing back. It's just not his
Yeah.
skill set at all. So if Hamer's another one whose contract's up, there's a new deal being offered. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to see. But I feel like if it doesn't, I'm not really feeling that down about it because I think it opens up the
Interesting.
opportunity to get a proper dynamic wing back in there, which is something I've
Yeah.
wanted for a while now.
So if it's wing backs, then you reckon the width will come from them, and then
Well,
you
you naturally
there's
think so, yeah, because
mm,
it might well be the case where he plays the two with Helm behind, or he switches out. He could switch out to a three and put Helm out on the left. It is possible for him to do that. So it could be Helm, Stockton, and Gordon as a three, or
yeah.
maybe Helm behind Stockton and Gordon potentially.
Or you could have a hybrid of both those two things
Yep,
where you kind of switch.
yep,
Yeah, that could be really interesting. So hopefully Dino Maamria can find the right balance. I think that the sort of the dynamic of the midfield that you really want is a controller, a creator, and a box to box type.
yep.
I think Terry Taylor takes on the sort of controller role. We think Joe Powell might replace him there, but Deji Oshalaja for me is going to be really important in terms of that athleticism that he brings and the ability to break into the box as well
Yeah,
for crosses and
and it's like we're saying, we're just waiting to see if that contract signs or not. We just can't say till that new deal comes in. And I'd like him in there because he's been one of the most improved players I think since Dino Maamria became the number one. Really, I think he kind of had a bit of reputation for a player who made mistakes maybe on the Hasselbank, and he was playing everywhere in the back line or in midfield, just kind of shooting in where he can, didn't establish a spot, and then came into midfield. That tenacity has, that athleticism he's got, which is so good for a player even of his size, the leap he has, the ability to run all game. He
mm,
certainly is suitable for that box to box role, albeit with rather limited technical ability compared to the two alongside him. So if it is that three of Helm, Powell, and Oshalaja revisited again next year, that would be positive for Burton, I think.
yeah, well, hopefully Oshalaja can stay on because I think, yeah, he's got a really important role to play if he does. Um, in terms of wing backs, is there anyone in the current squad who could play wing back, or is it literally you're going to need three or four for those positions?
Well, Braither would have if he was 5 years younger.
Yeah,
He's now mid
he's
thirties.
fine.
He's done. He's going to be in the centre of defence again next season, probably alongside Hughes, and there'll be more centre backs to add in now because that's basically the two defenders on the books. I really want Jasper Moon back. I think Barnsley have offered him a new deal. I haven't seen it confirmed anywhere. If there is the chance to take Moon off them, that'd be brilliant because he got very popular here very quickly with what he did in the back end of last season, and it'd be a logical fit.
Well, the
I was
fact
kind of hoping,
they've signed Casper
yeah, Lapata, yeah, Casper
Lapata
Lapata,
from
maybe.
Southend,
I was really
which
hoping Shaughnessy could fit into this, but he's obviously gone to Portsmouth, so that's gone. The chance of that's
yeah,
gone, annoyingly. So yeah, it's all there. It's, I think really the only position that's sorted now really is probably striker position with Walker,
yeah.
Stockton, and Gordon as the options. Everywhere else still needs personnel in.
What did you make of Walker for the half season you've had him?
I'm being really patient with him because he was playing National League football 6 months ago with Dagenham, where he had a decent impact and got a couple of goals to his name so far. It's like I've said, I think the skill that he has is he seems to be quite good at manipulating where the ball's going to drop, anticipating where its movement, and that's happened a couple of times. And if he can get a bit more of a solid connection with some of the volleys he's hit, he probably would have had a couple more dangerous attempts to his game right now. And I think we just got to be really patient with him. I'm quite pleased. You know, if you come back to me last week, Gab, I would have said I don't want to be relying on him as the main striker because you just can't be putting that kind of pressure on a 25-year-old who's never played at this level before. So
Sure.
to have him now as kind of the backup impact substitute, maybe with Stockton or Gordon third ahead of him, it'll be positive for him. I
He
think
can play wide as well, can't
he
he?
can.
So
Yeah,
if
I
you play
like him on the
40,
right. When we've gone
okay.
to a three, sometimes it was sometimes Kirk, Dale Taylor, and then Walker would go out on the right instead of Johnny Smith, and it was always quite good because he hasn't got a decent little bit of pace to him and some movement in behind, which he tries to use.
Do you reckon you could bring Charlie Kirk back, or if
I
Dino's
don't know.
planning a wing?
I
Yeah,
don't know what
if
the
it's a wing
situation.
back system, if it's 3-5-2, then
Yeah, I'm thinking about the loan players who went. Moon's my number one. I'd love him back because I know his
yeah.
contract is up at Barnsley, as I've said.
Is Jasper Moon left-footed, by the way?
No,
No.
he's just playing on the left side, the three.
Okay.
He's
So
just got
if you
foot.
didn't get Jasper Moon back, the one advantage would be that you could bring in a left-footed player on the left of three.
It's a question of who that is because they're quite they're quite in demand. Left-sided centre backs, aren't they? I mean,
Sure.
I'm still a bit disappointed we never gave Blake Tracy a proper go. I feel like
Yeah, he was player of the
I
year
felt
at
like we maybe had
Swindon
an opportunity
this
there, but
year.
didn't take it. And well, at least with Swindon now, so that's their gain. In terms of the lone players who've gone, Taylor I think will move on. He had a very good impact up top.
Mm.
Ashford I'd love back for another year. Kirk would be really nice. Don't know what the situation is with him at Charlton, whether they might persist with him or whether he might move somewhere else. We'll have to see.
Mm.
And then Lavelle never really got game time. Hadmay didn't have the positive impact you wanted
He's
coming
been so,
back.
so unlucky with injury, Sam Lavelle, hasn't he? Because
Yeah, yeah,
he
it's such a
showed
shame.
such potential as a youngster at Morecambe, and then since then it just hasn't quite gone to plan for him, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then Amisa likewise is something I'm indifferent on. Whether if he comes back again, fine. Hopefully he's a backup, and if he does move on, fine again. Just got
Mm.
loads to replace really at the moment. I kind of wish we'd done if we did this a month later, Gab, we'd have loads more to talk about with new signings in.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. In terms of the young players coming through at Burton, anyone you're particularly excited to see? Because there were a couple released that may be a little bit surprising.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shame. The ones that disappointed us probably most out of the ones released. One of them was Sam Winnell, who you kind of thought is never going to be the number one, but he could have been an okay backup. But
I'm not,
now the
yeah.
other two have come in, I'm not that fussed about that anymore.
Mm.
But at the time, you felt it. The one that kind of annoyed people was Thierry Lati Fairweather and Ben Radcliffe, a couple of youngsters out of the academy. Lati Fairweather had to go at both wing back spots a couple of times, had some tough away days, not done himself any disservice at all. He'd done well in those couple of games, and Radcliffe came on final day against MK Dons, put in a very solid performance of right back in a back four, having had a
Oh, I
really
thought
good
he
loan
played
spell at
against
Banbury.
Cambridge, actually. I think it might have been against
Was
Cambridge
it
on
Cambridge or was it?
Saturday.
I feel like it was MK Dons. It might have been.
I feel like it was Cambridge Radcliffe
It was
played.
one of the last two. Let's put it that way. It was one of the final games, and he'd
I'm
had a
with
really good
you.
loan spell at Banbury, and they both let go, and it's kind of annoyed people a bit because it kind of felt like they were gonna kind of force their way maybe into the team long
Mm.
term, and David moved on, and well, we'll see what happens with them. I'm always a
I
little bit
think,
annoyed. I'm worried a bit, Gab. It's going to be a bit like Ben Fox or Joe Sabara, where we look back on that in a few years' time and think probably should have kept them because they're doing all right now. We'll have to see.
yeah, well, we'll see about that. I seem to think there's a 16-year-old in the academy who's like a 6'4" unit at centre back that Dino Maamria seems to think has some
Uh,
potential. Whose name escapes me.
there's. Oh, I'm trying to think about the academy lads. I think a new deal's been offered to Tom Hewlett, who's a young striker.
Ah, yeah.
See what comes with him. He had a nasty
He's
injury
supposed to
not
have
too long
quite
ago.
good physical qualities, hasn't
Very
he?
good finisher. Very good finisher on the turn is what I've seen with him.
Mm.
Jakub Niemczyk, young Polish winger, might break into the team every now and then. Lad called Finn Delap might be the guy you're referring to. He's Rory Delap's son, one of his sons.
Okay, I
Because
don't think
There's
that's the
Liam
name.
Delap, obviously, who was at Preston, and then Finn Delap, I think, is Rory's other son,
Oh,
who
okay.
is in the Burton Cup. I think he's a fullback. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I think he plays somewhere at the back. But yeah, it's always felt a bit tricky being a Burton youngster at times. Certainly, in the last couple of seasons, with Burton's priorities being requiring a lot more experienced heads to break people in. But there might
Hmm.
be some who come into the mould over the rest of the season as the
Yeah,
season progresses.
I certainly you get some managers who almost treat the academy as a completely different thing, a
Mm-hmm.
completely different entity to what they're working with because they're so sort of pressured by the short-term results that they actually can't pay much attention to the academy. But I think what I like about Dino Maamria, and I think he's probably benefited from the security that the football club gives him to an extent, is the fact that he does go to all the academy games. He goes to different age groups. He's connected. He knows the players. He knows the parents, and he's very at the sort of centre of it, which I really admire, to be honest. So,
It's the main difference between him and Hasselbank. Really, he cares. I
mm,
think we could say Jimmy certainly at the start of last season cared more about his punditry work than he did Burton. Really, you could see that. And Dino's come in and he wants to be the main man. He wants to be what the manager is, which is just at the helm of everything. He sees himself here for many years to come. Is my understanding of this. He believes in
mm,
what he's got available to him, and the club will give him the opportunity to do that if he provides the results. I'm certain of that.
yeah, absolutely. So, how many more players are Burton Albion going to need this summer? Then, Ed,
Oof.
another 10? Do you think?
Another 10 or 11, I would reckon.
10 or
The
11?
retain list came out. We saw the amount of players who were still under contract, the amount being offered, and we thought, yeah, it's going to be another busy summer. I think it's been a while since Burton haven't had a busy summer. We're trying to recover from what was actually quite a bit of deadwood that ended up getting brought in by Hasselbank. Players that we thought might work didn't end up working. They've been moved on, and now this is going to be Dino Maamria's team by the end of it, certainly. So
Mm,
I think really Stockton and Gorn is a great start. Hopefully, need a bit more to come because obviously we open pre-season on the 1st at Nuneaton. Might ask you to go and goal for that because I know you're quite a tall lad.
Yeah.
So if you
Well, do you
fancy a
know
going
what?
goal for that for
Stevenage,
Nuneaton, Nuneaton's not far from you. You can tag along, come playing
that's
goal for Burton on the day.
that's a good chat. Do you know what? At Stevenage, after they won promotion against Grimsby, I actually did go on the pitch and I played against the community lads, and I had a going goal,
There you
and
go,
I tried,
sorted.
and I didn't save a single penalty, but
Ah,
I have got a certain commanding presence. So if Dino's watching this, he can give me a
yeah, we
call.
might need you in goal for that game on the first, depending on whether we get a goalkeeper in between now and then.
I'll do my best for the Brewers, absolutely. I want to ask you about Bobby Canwart, Ed,
Hmm.
because I think his season could depend on whether Dino makes 3-5-2 or 4-2-3-1 the predominant formation. Because if it's 4-2-3-1, that obviously opens it up for a bit more of a winger. Do you think there's potential for him to be converted into a wing back if he needs to be?
I worry a little bit about his decisions in the final third. I remember the Tharde MK Dons, Braith had rinsed him, absolutely rinsed him, because we had a moment where he picked up the ball in the right hand channel, tried to carry it out from basically his own third, lost the ball, and it gets sent back in. The cross gets put over the bar, and Braith had absolutely went in on him, just to try and hold the ball, not making the correct decisions in the final third. So I think he reminds me a little bit of Templeton, and Templeton liked to try and carry it out from the
Well,
back with
Tempe
his
was a
dribbling.
fun player there,
He
wasn't
was,
he?
but I remember a couple of occasions. I
Yeah.
can't remember if it was against, but he picked it up in the left back position, tried to carry it out into the other third, and he lost the ball. And we're all thinking, not there. Come on, be sensible here with your
Yeah,
choices.
but then I also, if just to kind of balance that out, like if you can sort of curb that side of his game slightly, where you get him to make, slightly better decisions or slightly more
Yeah,
streetwise, you kind of have that. I think that
I
spontaneity,
think
that
I think to, in answer to your question, Gab, I think he'd be more likely probably to play as a striker than a wing back in my eyes.
really centre forward, Bobby Campbell.
I don't really believe in his defensive game that much. Is my understanding of it. So if we were going to play, it's a bit like with Johnny Smith. Really, I think if we didn't play with wingers, he's not really going to fit here. It's just the way I feel with him, really. He's got his best position. Look, the first start of the season, he was a bright spark, definitely. And then he had an injury, had a period out, and he's come back in. He's looked a bit more shaky, not quite up to speed. So whether that happens long term for him, we'll have to see. But it just feels, sadly, a bit like Johnny Smith in a player that if you give him a chance to play as a winger, you'll get what you want. If he has to go somewhere else,
What
not going to work
about
the way
though,
it's hoped
Ed?
with him.
If you get a quick, strong right outside centre back?
Like, just trying to think of names for that role. I don't know if the
Well, let's park the names for the moment because that's a bit more of a detailed sort of conversation. But just say you bring in someone who's quick and strong and good defensively and has played as a fullback, and then maybe you move Sam Hughes into the middle of the back three, and maybe Brayford doesn't play so much. Could you get away with playing Bobby Camwar as a right wing back then?
possibly. I mean, it's never really crossed my mind. It might cross Dino's mind. I don't know. In my eyes, Bobby Cameron's a forward and only really a forward. I
Okay,
never really thought of deploying him back there, so possibly. My feeling at the minute is that if we don't play with a winger, he's sadly not going to be the right fit.
yeah,
It's just the way I feel with him
okay.
at the minute.
That's fair enough. Well, hopefully from his point of view, it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 next season, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, do you think it's going to be a big pre-season for Kieran Gilligan and Charlie Lakin, especially if there's no midfield signings in the next sort of 9 days or so? Because presumably they'll start at Nuneaton,
Yeah,
won't they?
I want to see Gilligan break into the team a bit more because he did under Buxton and it was a good moment for him. I think he was only 18, 19 at the time. He'd literally just signed his first pro contract and got a new deal signed under Buxton, which means he's still under contract even now. And he's the tenacious one. You know, the only disadvantage to him is that he is very small, so he's not going to do a lot aerially dominant. But he certainly carries the tenacity, a decent little bit of technical ability. He likes drifting into the right channel. Reminds me a little bit of Ryan Edwards in that he likes drifting into that right channel. If you remember him.
But yeah, we were in the Ryan Edwards fan club.
Yeah, of course.
How
Yeah,
do you
yeah, yeah.
insult my devotion to the Ryan Edwards fan
Yeah,
club? Has he got the energy to go? Because Ryan Edwards
he's
was,
absolutely got the energy, absolutely
oh,
got the
really?
tenacity to be that. That's a
Okay.
big quality, is tenacity. And I remember watching him during the COVID season. He likes to switch and play out to the flanks if the opportunity comes from midfield. I think he could operate in the box to box role. Disadvantage for him, I
Okay.
suppose, a bit like Joseph Barr when he was there. Is he's not a particularly big lad. He seems quite
Mm.
small compared to others on the pitch, but
Yeah. So
perhaps he can
so
make
it'd
use
be
of that.
yeah, it'd be hard for him to replace Oshalaja directly because
Yeah,
Oshalaja is obviously a very
yeah.
physical
But then
profile.
it's a similar thing with Lakin, and Lakin's a really interesting one because I mean, he went to Doncaster, another one who got injured to them. I mean, Doncaster had so many injuries last season, so he missed out on the chance of playing there. But I always felt like with Lakin, I haven't really been able to work out what his kind of midfield role is yet. I
He's
feel like
played some pressing ten sometimes,
if
hasn't he?
Clough had signed him, I think he would have taken that kind of Ryan Edwards, Jamie Allen's role as a the box to box midfielder in there.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same with Dino in there. So I wonder if he's one of those who might well be moved on once other players come in, because I feel like maybe his value to Burton isn't here anymore to the way people hoped it was when he signed.
Yeah, he's another one who's very tenacious though, but has he got enough more? I look at players like Callum Riley. I mean, it seems like an obvious comparison because it's also coming through the Birmingham Academy, but it's like he's definitely got the tenacity. But then at some point in your career, you've kind of got to add another layer to that. And I don't know if Charlie Lakin has necessarily done that yet. Hopefully, he can do that with a good pre-season, but.
Well, the opportunity is there at the minute for him because there's a
Yeah,
gap in midfield.
yeah,
If he wants to grab in his early few games, go and do it because there's an
yeah.
opportunity there for him.
Yeah, if he smashes it at Nuneaton, then hopefully he can grow into
Well,
pre-season.
if you pick him out with your distribution, Gab, that you can only
I
hope
know.
for
Yeah,
that,
I'll
can't
have to. I'll go for the long throw attack, and hopefully Lakes can do something with that. Are you excited for next season with Burton? Because you've been in this league for a long time now, and I suppose the novelty of Burton Albion being a League One football club, maybe not so much for the older generations, but for a certain generation, that kind of wears off a little bit.
Yeah, I think naturally being Burton and one of the smallest clubs in the league, I'm going to keep monitoring that gap to 21st. I think you just have to. With the last couple of seasons we kind of, I've always felt this 2 years ago actually in 21-22 where you start out and you kind of keep it right, what's the gap between ourselves and the relegation zone so we don't get ourselves into any kind of serious trouble. But it is interesting this year because I'm sure you'll agree, Gab, there's an opportunity here to someone
Yeah,
in the middle League One.
that's the
We're
funny
looking at
thing,
it
isn't it?
because
I mean,
you know
because I
you've
look
got
at
those three great sides that have gone up. The three that come down, Reading are a mess. We're going to finally sort themselves out, thank goodness. Blackpool, I'm not really sure yet with them. See what they're like, but it does feel like outside of maybe Barnsley, Bolton, Derby, there's an opportunity to some of that middle pack to go and make serious top six pushes next year. Lincoln,
it's
Portsmouth have recruited really well already.
Yeah, it's a weird one for me because I look at League Two and I'm straining to leave clubs out of the top seven where there's going to be so many disappointed owners because
Absolutely.
you've got loads of big clubs and big spending clubs
Yep.
that are all going to be really ambitious. Whereas I think with League One, I'm almost straining a bit more to put clubs into the top six because I think there's probably three that I'm pretty confident are going to finish in the top six next season, and there's probably from the rest you're kind of not sure at this juncture.
It's that middle pack, and I like to think Burton are in that middle pack. We've just got to
Yeah.
build the squad for it because there's no doubt. You look at the record, Dino. I think since Dino came in, we were maybe 9th or 10th overall in the league from the moment he took charge in September.
Mm.
So if he maintains that over a season, we have a push at it,
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, you go back to the 21-22 season where it felt like a real split League One. I don't feel like it's going to be like that a little bit more. I
No.
think there's going to be a lot of upsets. I think there's going to be maybe a narrower gap. Like I remember when there was sort of Argyle missed out on the playoffs with 80 points and Fleetwood missed out on 40. There's no way that it's going to be a 40-point gap
I
between
wouldn't have thought so,
relegation
no.
and the playoffs next
No.
season. I think it's going to be a lot narrower.
That'll be my feeling as well, quite an open gap. We might well find that the three I'd expect to be up there, Bolton, Barnsley, Derby, might get themselves a bit of a gap between themselves depending on how they reply to players, but it certainly does feel like 5th/6th has got an opportunity for someone who finished in the middle of the pack this year, if they get it right, to have a proper go and grab it next year.
Yeah, absolutely, and let's hope that's Burton Albion. Listen, we normally do an hour on summer deep dives, but to be honest, I think with Burton Albion, so much depends on the summer business. There's a lot of unknowns. It's almost
I'm waiting
difficult
for you
to
to sign
see.
that contract, Gab. Come on.
I know, yeah, absolutely. I fancy myself as a bit of a solid
Trialists
second
can play
half.
in pre-season games. You're fine. We'll have you down as
Yeah,
trialist. We'll put you
I
in the.
think
We'll stick you in
I'll
goal.
play. I tell you what, I'll play 45 minutes in goal, and then I'll do the second half as a sort of solid, no nonsense centre back, maybe middle of the
Stick
back
alongside
three.
Husey, yeah. Stick
Yeah,
in the middle alongside
absolutely.
Husey. Love
Just
that.
head balls out of the box, organised, shout. I reckon Dino exciting year for Burton Albion under Dino Maamria. Ed, such a pleasure to talk Albion with you. Unfortunately, no D3D4 next season. I absolutely loved that podcast. What you've done over the last 6 years. What are your plans and for next season in terms of the content that you're providing and all the rest of it?
Well, the hope for me is to become a more general EFL, so I'm getting myself stuck my nose a lot more into the championship. So getting
You're
more.
already generally EFL, aren't you?
I had quite a long focus, I think, on League 1, League 2 last year because of D3, D4, but now I'm going to
Sure.
get myself a lot more focus on Championship, so Argyle fans can't get rid of me. They'll never be able to get rid of me. I'm always going to be talking about them, especially when they keep picking up players that I like and keep bringing those in. So a lot more EFL focus to me. Just going to go and enjoy the season. Got my Sundays back, so we'll see if we can use those Sundays for anything quite good. And plans in the line, we'll see what comes with those later down the line.
Lovely stuff. If you've enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave us a comment and what you think Burton Albion need this summer. Also, drop us a follow at Gabs.
Need a lot of characters to explain what Burton need this summer.
Absolutely. Drop Ed a follow, of course, at Edward_W97. You can also follow us, subscribe to us even on YouTube and on Spotify. This has been EFL Debate, the Burton Albion Summer Deep Dive. See you again very soon.